Alright, my friends, this is Josh Rubin from East West Healing. I am a thyroid specialist. What I do is teach people how to use food to regulate hypothyroidism. Crazy? Yes, but it can be done, and it is done all the time. As you'll learn about it if you continually follow our live events. Before we get started, there's a couple things I want to mention. First is my wife's not able to make it today. My son is sick. So, of course, with him being sick, daycare is gone because they don't want to get sick. And so he needs that attention right now. So she is with him, and she really is bummed. She wished she could be on here because, of course, she and I want her to be on here. She has a lot of information and knowledge, but at the same time, she just gives that other approach, kind of the yin yang to mine, and it's very easy to understand. So she's missed, but she will be back on here Thursday. And that reminds us, don't forget that every Monday and Thursday at 12 p.m. Pacific Coast time, we're doing these Facebook Lives, what we're calling Coffee Talk, to talk about different topics, whether it be controversial or not, to help educate you, answer your questions, and really to share our approach and connect with our audience a little bit more and build that relationship. So today's topic is about ketosis, the pros and cons of ketosis, or our philosophy around it, our thoughts around it. And Thursdays is about weight loss or weight gain and hypothyroidism. So definitely check that out. We'll be here, same channel, same time, same place, etc. Before we get rocking and rolling, I want to share with you that we offer what's called the Restoration Thyroid audio series. It's complimentary, it's an obligation. It's a 7-part audio series that talks about not only our philosophy, but how to use food, or what we call food strategy, to regulate thyroid and adrenal health, just using food. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to post that in the comment section, so you can check that out. At the same time, I'm going to post, because a lot of people asked us, how do I get in contact with you? How do I talk to you? I'm going to post our contact page if you want to set up our free 15-minute consult to learn more about what we do, or to talk about yourself and have us answer some of your questions and give you some tips. Or if you're interested in some consulting, you'll see those links in the contact page below, our comment page below, so you can check those out to learn a little bit more, about us, and so we can learn about you. So I did have a question before we get started. Someone wanted to know what book I'm reading right now. Well, I'm reading 2 books, actually. I love reading, and I also love to know what other people are reading. So if you're reading a good book right now, or if you're reading a book and you don't like it, please share it below. I'd love to know. It doesn't have to be about food. It could be about anything. I'm reading The Subtle Art of Not Giving Up. Starts with an F. Love it so far. It's a great book. I'm straight from the hip type of guy, and this book is just awesome. The other book I'm reading is The Carbon Dioxide Syndrome. It's a book about breathing and the carbon dioxide syndrome. So definitely post what you're reading. I'd love to know whether you're on the video now or you're watching on the playback. So let's talk about ketosis. Now, this is the big rage right now, right? Ketosis this, ketosis that. Ketosis is good for this, ketosis is good for that. Now, there's parts of this we agree with, and there's a lot of parts that we don't agree with, right? So let's look at the history and the problem, and then we'll kind of go into the solution of what's going on. The ketogenic diet was created, developed, found, whatever, in the 1920s. And it was found because what they were learning is that certain epileptic patients were not responding to medication. I don't know who founded it, but this is the basis. It doesn't have to be technical. If you want to find out, just Google it. But it was created in the 1920s to help those who have seizures that didn't respond to medication, right? And really, the goal was to increase the body's utilization of fat for energy instead of glucose, so we could get ATP or energy production. And what this really means is they found that epileptic patients had a hard time using glucose to produce energy, right? And when we produce energy, we are more apt to be in a healthy, healing state. So they found that using ketones, or fat for energy that allowed us to produce ketones, it allowed us to produce energy. And that's really the simplicity of it. But there's a lot of problems with this. Now, back in the day, the classic ketogenic diet, I have a lot of notes here, and I don't want to sure I miss anything, so I'm definitely going to look this way a little bit, because I want to get everything to you. The classical ketogenic diet, I think, was called the long chain triglyceride diet. And what they were trying to do is provide you with 3 to 4 grams of fat for every gram of carbohydrates that you took in. Of course, over the years, because we want to lose weight, it's been adapted to, I believe, to what's going on in our society. And it's been adapted to help people lose weight, right? Now, the basis of it is studies show that the ketogenic diet, a high-fat, calorie-restricted diet, was used to treat epileptic, children mainly. It alters the genes that are involved in energy metabolism in the brain, basically what I just talked about, which in turn helps to stabilize the function of the neurons exposed to the challenges of epileptic seizures. So in a sense, it helped to produce energy to quiet down the excitement of the brain, which makes sense because when we're producing energy in the cell, what we're doing is we're balancing an autonomic nervous system, right? The sympathetic isn't dominant, the parasympathetic isn't dominant. We're creating that balance, and that's what we need. So when we're not, and we have a seizure, it's highly excitable to the brain, it's highly excitable to the body, and it's not supportive to prevent seizures or recover from them in a short amount of time. So really what we're saying is this. We're simplifying it. By reducing carbs and increasing fat, we're forcing, and this is the key word, we're forcing the body to burn fat for energy, ketosis. This is the caveat. This is exactly what happens when we are in a starvation state, when we are fasting. So why do we want to eat in a way that mimics starvation or fasting? It doesn't make sense to us, right? Now, I'm going to quote a research study that I have here. I'll put the link in the comments. If you're interested, let me know if you're interested or not. But I want to give you the science of it just so it makes sense, because there's different people watching. Some people like the simplicity, some people like the science, but here it is. During fasting, the body metabolizes fat stores via lipolysis, and then fatty acids undergo beta oxidation. So what this is saying is, you're not getting carbs, you're getting high fat, you make your body use fatty acids for energy, which is essentially catabolic. It's through producing excess hormones to break down your tissues, to break down fat through lipolysis, to use these fatty acids for energy. This is catabolic. It's not efficient, and it wastes glucose, which is not what we want to do. Ketone bodies in the cell can then be used as precursors to generate ATP. That's what I was talking about, which is energy. The ketogenic diet, which is very high in fat and low in carbs, is thought to stimulate metabolic effects of starvation by forcing the body to use primarily fat as a fuel source, and this is in research. So forcing is not a good thing, because we always want to work with the body, right? We always want to work with the body and say, the body's primary source of energy is glucose. Let's give it glucose in the right amounts, the right type, etc., which we'll talk about, so it can do what it's designed to do. When we give it the wrong time or too much, it's a problem. But the problem is our society thinks sugar and carbs are the devil, so we pull them all away. That is just as extreme as eating too much, right? We create a huge problem because storing glucose or getting the right types of carbs so our liver can store glycogen is important because it's a primary source of energy needed by all the cells in our body, our tissues, our brain, our cells, everything. So our systems and organs can do what they're designed to do, which is create health and work together as a team. It's a system of systems. As well as stored glycogen assists in the conversion of thyroid hormone, it assists with energy of the growing fetus. It regulates anxiety. It helps us with sleep. It regulates blood sugar, energy, and there's about 100 more important qualities of storing glycogen in the body. And when you pull that away with a ketogenic diet, there's a lot of negative effects that are happening, right? Now, initially we feel good when we're in the ketogenic diet. Why? You're in a hyperadrenaline state. Everyone feels good when they're in a hyperadrenaline state. right? Last time you did a bungee jump. Last time you did something you typically don't do and you get this rush. That is hyperadrenaline. You feel good. You're ready to do it, right? But you're producing that state every day initially because you're in that starvation mode. But the body goes through a cycle. So initially, it feels good. But long term, you start to deplete a lot of different hormones, amino acids, neurotransmitters, and how the systems work within the body. And this is where problems start to arise. Now, initially, people lose weight because they're removing all those sugars, right? But over time, this diet is not sustainable. I always say this, that the ketogenic diet is good for two things. Treating epilepsy, right? Of course, that's why it was founded. I'm not here to deny that because I don't know enough about it. But also helping people lose weight super duper fast. But with a capital B-U-T, bold, underline, italicized, font 900. At the expense of damaging your metabolism. You've heard of yo-yo dieting, right? You cut calories, you lose weight, but then you eat normal again. And then you try to diet again because you gain weight. But next time, it's harder to lose weight. Why? Because your metabolism is damaged. And the more you damage your metabolism, the less likely you are going to be able to lose weight or get healthy, right? It's much more challenging because of the stress you're putting in your system and how you're training your nervous system, how you're teaching your liver not to store glycogen, and what you're doing to your cells, right? So it's really important we support our body. Now, as I mentioned, does our body use fat or protein for energy at some different parts of the day? Definitely they do. Certain organs use protein and fat for energy, but it's not efficient. We don't use energy to move. We don't use energy to think. We don't use protein and fat as energy to move or to think or to do anything except when we are at rest in a utopic state, homeostatic state. So if we live a good life, we eat good foods, we go to bed, we can use fat for energy. But that's if we have stored glycogen and our metabolism is working appropriately, right? For a long period of time. What most people do is they release cortisol and adrenaline. That's why they can't sleep. That's why they're restless. That's why they wake up with a rapid pulse or a low temperature, etc., right? Because they're not regulating their blood sugar and their body releases compensatory hormones. Now, the big problem for me is with a ketogenic diet, the only way ketones can be present is if cortisol is present, right? We are in starvation mode. We are in a stressed sympathetic state. And when we produce excess cortisol, we waste bone, we waste muscle, we demineralize bone, we increase TSH and create the illusion of a thyroid problem. We alter the conversion of T4 to T3, which creates the illusion of a thyroid problem. We lose weight, but we think it's healthy weight loss, but it's not healthy weight loss. What else? And we increase free fatty acids, which are highly inflammatory when used for energy long term, right? So from our standpoint, if we look at the history and the way it was used and how it's been somewhat bastardized, we look at, okay, it's being used for weight loss in a catabolic sense, right? We're teaching our body to break itself down by using fats for energy, but our body's supposed to use glucose, or forcing it to do something it's not designed to do. And I'm talking from experience, right? I used to try this back in the day. It never worked for me. How did I feel? I'll tell you. Exactly like everyone else that feels the same way that's calling me that it worked for us initially. They feel great. But then over time, they feel flabby. They feel like they're losing muscle. They don't have long-term energy, maybe short-term bursts of energy, and that's it. They start having sleep issues, and they start gaining weight, right? These are the most common things I see. It can only be used short-term, okay? And I'll talk about this at the end. So, as we go through this as well, if you have any questions, feel free to post them, whether you're watching the video or you're watching it on the playback. I would love to know if you have any questions. I'll try to get to them in the end if I have time. If not, my wife or myself will get to them within the next 24 to 48 hours for sure. So, because the whole point of this is to talk to you about the ketogenic diet, but what happens when we lower carbohydrate consumption to our system, right? So you understand that, like, hey, I'm doing this, but I'm removing something that is very important. And I'm not talking about Pop-Tarts and donuts. I'm talking about, like, fruits and roots. Everyone's afraid of fruit. And I've said this on a podcast recently. The day that you think fruit is dangerous, you need to sit down, look in the mirror, and rethink what you're doing to become healthy, right? It's a fruit. It's a fruit, and it is healthy, right? The sugars on it are not going to kill you, and they're not going to give you diabetes. It's fructose, doesn't stimulate insulin. It inhibits glucose, which regulates insulin, doesn't tax the pancreas like glucose does, so it's very balancing to the system. So let's look at when we reduce carbohydrate consumption, what that does to thyroid health, okay? Number one, you prevent the storage of glycogen in the liver. And this is huge because this is what we believe is why it takes a long time for people to heal, a long time for people to see a shift in their body temperature and pulse, right, which shows us what's going on in the cell. A long time to heal from being hypothyroid or having thyroid issues, right? Because we've taught our body from the way we live, the state that we live, sympathetic state, and the foods we're not eating, meaning, carbs, to not store glucose. So we've trained our body to do this, but this is a problem. Once again, this is how we derive energy, convert thyroid hormone, and produce energy in the cell. And this creates a healthy, healing environment. So we need it. At the same time, if we're not getting carbs, we're not converting thyroid hormone. And this is huge because we store glycogen in the liver for a reason. So we can use it to convert T4 inactive to T3 active thyroid hormone. If we don't have that glycogen, what happens? TSH goes up, T3 goes down. Reverse T3 goes up, among other things, right? So it creates the illusion that we have hypothyroidism, but we really don't. We are a representation of how we live and what we eat. And what we're seeing is the effects on our physiology for how we're living and how we're eating. And that's why we always say a lot of people that come to us don't have hypothyroidism. They have functional hypothyroidism. There's an issue with thyroid hormone conversion, production, cortisol, estrogen, etc. that's creating the illusion of hypothyroidism. We don't produce energy anymore. And we don't produce energy, we're producing lactic acid. This creates that metabolic acidosis that everyone is so crazy about. And this is not a good place to be because when we produce energy, we are in a healing homeostatic balanced state. So healing can begin to happen. We're creating that platform. When we produce lactic acid, we are in a metabolic acidosis state. It creates hyperventilation or respiratory alkalosis, and the cycle continues. So we are in an inflamed state. So it's very hard for our body to heal, right? And we just keep moving backwards and backwards over time. I already mentioned TSH and all that. We become hypoglycemic. Hypoglycemia has many effects, of course, with anxiety, with sleep, weight loss or weight gain, as well as the thyroid. Once again, it always comes back to the liver, thyroid hormone conversion, and using then the cell to produce energy so we can be in this balanced state. And at the same time, if this goes on long term, right, this is what we've always said, a high protein diet is estrogenic. Why? If we don't take in enough carbs and we create this hypothyroid environment, hypothyroidism breeds recirculating estrogen, and recirculating estrogen continually inhibits thyroid hormone conversion, right? And of course leads to many other issues. So there's a huge effect not only on the thyroid but other systems when we don't get the right types of carbohydrates long term. So hopefully at this point it's kind of making sense to you. Hey, I'm going to eat this way. I might feel good, right, because of an adrenaline response. But this is what's going on in my physiology that I'm not seeing or sensing that long term can lead to like anxiety problems, insomnia, weight gain, lack of energy, feeling flabby, not being able to sleep, etc. And these are the problems that most people are having because most people are very afraid of carbohydrates because we were taught to. Now, of course, there are solutions. Now, the first thing is you have to know your history. You have to know where you came from. You are everything from conception till now. Who are you and how did you get here? That has a large effect on the types of carbs you should eat and the types of carbs your body is going to be able to break down and the amount of carbs your body is going to be able to break down. You have to look at what types of carbs you're currently eating, how often you're eating them, what are you eating them with, what is the balance of protein and fat to them. Have you not eaten them for a long time and you're adding them back in? How fast are you adding them back in? You have to look at, have you indulged in them for too long, right? And you need to back off. Are you living in a stress state and deriving energy from being in a sympathetic state? Do you have a suppressed immune system, which is altering gut health? The list goes on. And the thing is, all these questions that you're asking yourself will affect how carbs are metabolized in your system. Now, I'm not sitting here advocating like, hey, you should be eating grains and pizza and donuts. We're talking about healing right now. You know, I don't want to go into like balance. Do I think people are human and they should, enjoy that stuff over time? Definitely. But I'm talking from a healing state. I'm talking about what we need to really get ourselves and break this vicious cycle of, I'm sick. I've tried a million things. It doesn't work. I've spent a lot of money and it doesn't work. I worked with a lot of practitioners and this does not work. Right? So I'm talking from a place of like intensity. Let's do this. So I'm talking about eating fruits and roots. And a lot of the times people are afraid of fruits. Why? Because they haven't looked at their history. I would say 99% of the people I talk to that say fruits don't work for them, they come from a place of two places. They live and thrive in a sympathetic state, and they come from a place of eating a low-carb diet. So what do? They add a ton back in. And when we look at their logs, they're getting 200 to 300 grams of carbs when they used to get 50 to 100. That's a huge shift overnight. You've literally desensitized your system to be able to break down and absorb carbohydrates. You've trained your body to do that. That's why we say you have to look at the state of who you are and not blame a food. It's always the body we're putting it into. So then you add all this sugar into the system. Of course you're going to have a rebound effect. Of course you're going to have anxiety, low blood sugar, high blood sugar, weight gain. You're going too fast. You're going too fast. So for me, the solutions are this. Go slow. Go slow. I don't care if you overindulge, you underindulge. Where you come from, you always go slow. We live in an excited society. Everything. We can get everything now with Amazon Prime, right? We can order everything online. We don't have to leave our house, right? We can turn on the heat when it's cold. We can turn on the cold when it's hot. We go. We overtrain, we overwork, we undereat and undertake care of ourselves. We are all deriving energy from being in a stress state, and it takes time to de-shift the system. It's like you're trying to rewire your nervous system. And you can't just quiet down the sympathetic nervous system. You have to take time to live in a way to strengthen the parasympathetic nervous system. And you do that with food and breathing exercises. So check out our page at Metabolic Breathing on Instagram and Facebook. That's the easiest way to tap into the nervous system and strengthen the vagal brake or the parasympathetic nervous system. So go slow. Add in a small amount over time. Don't go all at once. Maybe you don't eat a lot of carbs, so maybe you start with every other meal. Or maybe one meal a day. And it takes you 6 weeks or 6 months to slowly add in carbs at every meal. Maybe if you're overindulging, you slowly pull some away over time. You don't just go, that's it. I'm switching it. You're in a physiological chaos. You are going to feel chaos. The third thing is always make sure that when you're having a carb or fruit or root that you pair it with protein and fat. Now later on it's important to look at the ratio of that because you could be getting metabolic carbs and still getting too many carbs and not enough protein and fat, or getting too much protein and fat and not enough carbs. So you got to look at that balance over time, but initially make sure you're getting protein and fat always with a carbohydrate. Make sure that you play around with sorry. Make sure that you play around with, I'm trying to see any questions here. Play around with you when you have a meal with a protein. Make sure you play around with having some fruits with a meal, having some roots with a meal or snack, and then some meals and snacks having a fruit and a root. You want to play with like seeing what works for you. When does it work for you? Because it's going to be different based on your energy level, when you work out, when you don't work out, your cycle, the seasons. Some people do better on more fruits and roots. Some people do better on roots than fruits. Some people do better when they mix them. So it's always important to say this is a science, it's a philosophy, but it's also an art. And we're applying it to humans in real life. So you have to play around with it, and you have to kind of experiment, and you have to put in the work. The third or fourth solution would be to pay attention to what is working. So when you're eating your foods and you're going through your daily life, pay attention to how is this working for me. Now we use feedback mechanisms like body temperature and pulse. It's qualitative. We can see and make that correlation how things are working for us. But take a second to sit down and say, how do I feel right now? What's going on with me? Where do I have tension? Do I feel exhausted, tired, or wired? How did this meal work for me? How do I feel after eating these foods? You know, look at your patterns day after day, because that's going to show you what is going on and what is working and not working, so you can make the shifts, right? Take that negative, turn it into a positive. Look at what's not working, so you can change it to make every meal work for you throughout the day to create physiological balance, right? So I know this is a lot and it's a big topic, but that is where we stand with the ketogenic diet, right? From where it was founded, the problems with it when we're talking about blood sugar and thyroid health, how it can be used, and I believe it can be used for a very, very, very short amount of time, right? If you want to lose weight, but at the expense of damaging your metabolism. I stand by that 1,000,000%. And the reason is this. If you don't believe me, it's okay. I don't expect everyone to believe me. Take your body temperature and pulse in the morning when you're laying down in bed, after 20 minutes after breakfast, 20 minutes after lunch, and if you work out, 30 to 45 minutes after working out, right? If you do the ketogenic diet. That is going to show you that what you're doing isn't working. You're going to see a few things. A low body temperature below 97.8 or 36.5, and a low pulse below 70 or 70 below 75. Or you're going to see a normal body temperature and pulse, with a really high pulse over 85, right? The temperature is normal, but it's the hyperadrenaline state that's driving and producing heat that's creating an illusion that everything's working. And normally what happens is when someone starts regulating their blood sugar, their pulse comes down and their temperature drops because it's no longer there to drive it up, right? So it's important to look at these feedback mechanisms to see what works or not. So do I believe that you can use this short term? Yes. Would I do it? No. But I believe that it can be if you want to lose weight, but there will be more and more expenses to your metabolism the longer you do this. So I want to take the last maybe 5 minutes to open it up for questions. Once again, I'd love to know where everyone's from, where you're listening from, if you're listening now in the playback. So type in where you're listening from, as well as I mentioned, I'm reading a couple books right now at the beginning. I'd love to know what books you're reading. Because I love just learning about new books, but I love reading too. And same thing with Jeannie. We're always looking for new books to read. So if you have any questions for me, go ahead and post them below. If you have any questions for Jeannie specifically, you can put them below and she'll definitely respond to them within 24 to 48 hours. So I want to open up to any questions about the ketogenic diet, our philosophy, hypothyroidism, what you're doing, what a client's doing, etc. We got a lot of people on here. So does anyone have any questions? No questions, huh? Pretty simple today, I guess. Makes a lot of sense. Makes sense to me. You know, when we talk about this, it's from our experience, right? We always look at the science. We always look at who's calling us, what they're talking about, or we like complaining about. I hate using that term, but what they talk to us about, the questions they have, and the people we're working with. In 99% of the time, they come to us from eating the ketogenic diet or a low carb diet. It's the most common thing. And I get it. I understand why people are afraid. But we are here to tell you this. You don't have to be afraid. If we learn to live in a way and eat in a way within balance, we can eat carbohydrates to help regulate our physiology, to create a foundation of health, but also lose weight or not gain weight and still be healthy and be where we want to be. It's doable. Now, are you going to lose weight overnight? No. It takes time. Your body's been in this state for a long time, so it takes time to unravel the system, but it is doable. So I want to take one more chance to open it up to any questions. If people have questions, let me scroll through here. Brett, Allison, Steph, Sherry, Susan, Rummage, go Patriots, Susan, Michelle, John, Josh, David, anyone? Paul, Jamie, hi Jamie. Anyone have any questions for us? If not, that's okay. I know this is a big topic. So a couple of reminders. First, this video, as well as all videos for playback, will be on our page. Or if you look at the left on our Facebook page, there's videos. If you click on that, there's a playlist for all past coffee talks that we're doing. Don't forget, if you have any questions, to post them below. We will get to them within 24 to 48 hours. And if you are interested, we are as well going to be on Thursday at noon, Pacific Coast time, talking about hypothyroidism and weight loss. So if you don't have any more questions, I appreciate everyone that tuned in and everyone that will be watching in the future. I'm going to go to the gym and enjoy a good workout. I'll see you guys Thursday.